Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Hey everybody, this is Jody.
And this is Candace.
And today we are talking about character naming. Is our official Squirrel Guide to Character Names. This is episode 12 of season 2. And I'm pretty excited about it because I think character names are not thought about nearly enough, and there's so much opportunity for making cool decisions when you end up naming your characters.
I love character names. I think that they can say so much about them.
Absolutely. Like, what's in a name? A name can instantly create a mental picture of someone before they're even subscribed. So Sergio is way different than Greg. Just think about it. Like, you got a mental picture when you heard that. I guarantee you did.
That's true.
So we're going to dive into that. But I wanted to start the conversation with talking about our favorite names from our characters in our own books. Because I like this topic.
I had a hard time deciding. I came up with a bunch. Sorry. I like go above and beyond, I guess, the assignment. Or just don't listen to their rules, as I said. That happens a lot. I like to collect names, and I was looking up the name for this. Appellations? That doesn't even sound...
I believe it is. It's Appellation.
It really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there are people who collect names. I run into names all the time, and I will often, if it strikes me, I will often write it down. I really like a character. His name is Wenlock. He's a smart, scientific-y guy in my fantasy series. I also like all of the, how I named my dwarves and just names that I found randomly. But my very favorite character I ever named is named Brown Eyes. And that's one word. Brown Eyes. And I don't have any explanation of why I decided to name her Brown Eyes, except that I knew that wasn't her name and that she had brown eyes. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
It was her alias, and that's what she just went by. So that seems pretty lame for me, my first. But
it's evocative. It definitely paints a small picture.
Yeah, I guess.
So the one name that I particularly like in my series is that of Alystra. And her name came from I took the word crystal and I scrambled up the letters until a different word came out that I kind of liked. And then I made it so the spelling was easy to read.
That's a good idea. I named this guy Christoph once, and he needed the name Christoph, but I spelled it the Polish way. And that was because he's Polish. But that was a really dumb idea because it was really hard to spell and to remind myself that that's the spelling throughout the entire document.
Is this Christoph with a K?
Yes, it was.
And double F.
Well, I don't even remember now, but there was a Y and there was a...
Ooh, you did go above and beyond.
It's Polish. I went the Polish way. That's what I was saying. So...
Gotcha.
It was beyond my skill set.
Well, and then my most amusing name is gerund, because if you're a grammar nerd,
I know what a
gerunds
is.
Gerunds are grammatical terms. They're when you use a noun form of a verb and it ends in ing. So I hate studying. Studying is a gerund. Cooking is fun. Cooking is a gerund.
Yes.
Yeah. So I always make fun that he's always running and jumping and stabbing and... It's a bad joke, and I like it. It is really mine. Funny. I am owning it.
How cute.
It was unintentional, because I originally wanted it to be a different J name, but it was too close to somebody I knew. And so I'm like, I can't do that.
So you pick on the poor gerunds.
Yeah,
the ings of the world.
The ings.
Good job.
When we're thinking about names, now we're going to start talking about how we can use names to help evoke a more rounded picture of our world. And so, because names have cultural meanings and names have symbolic meanings. So I was wondering if you had any notes about how to use names from other cultures respectfully.
there needs to be authenticity to your character, like naming characters of specific cultures appropriately. That appropriate to their culture, and it says something about who they are just by the name. It clues the reader into their specific identity, like immediately, without needing to go into great detail. So if we had, like at my workplace, I swear I work in like the UN. There's so many different ethnicities around me, and I don't have like a Jim or a Sarah that I work with. I have a Santiago and Amar and Iman and Gustavo. And these are, people that it's a very normal thing to have a different background from the people that you, when you're associating like that closely with. So I find it's not, I wouldn't call it stereotyping. I would call it just an accurate representation of a diverse culture and climate and atmosphere.
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, if you are walking down the street in any town USA, you're going to see people from all cultures. It depends on where you are, just how many you might see. But there's always a variety, and I think our stories need to reflect this because it almost comes across as inauthentic if everybody is extremely like English or Anglo-Saxon. Like if every single name is very much coming from the Anglo-Saxon tradition, then it feels weird unless there's some really big reason it needs to be that way. Because maybe you are in a city that has been untouched except for by the original settlers for 200 years. Then maybe they're all biblical names, and maybe that is going to be part of your naming tradition. But there should be a reason that you're either choosing to include a lot or not including them at all.
And if you think of the population of the world, there aren't very many. Like, we're only secluding like the Anglo-Saxon, right? That would just these regular names like Jody and Candace and whatever. Though Candace is historically like a black woman's name. I get lots of... Candace Thomas is there's like a professor who's named this, and she's lovely, and she went to like some awesome school that was,
you've got a doppelganger with personality and sass.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway,
I think we should also talk about symbolic meanings. So symbolic, you can either have direct or indirect symbology. So like if you're going to have someone with a flower name, and they use this famously in Great Gatsby. Daisy was very pretty, but she was quite fragile. So she actually matched her name really, really well. But Rose, they're beautiful, but they usually have a bite to them. Joseph, perseverance and loyalty. That's a biblical name. Aaron, the mouth of the prophet. I mean, we can use that in fantasy because heaven knows prophecies come from all over the place. And then you have this indirect symbolism where there are names that have gathered a meaning that isn't obvious. And this is where you look in the baby name books and you're like, oh, this name means blah, 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 blah. And you're like, that's cool to me as an author to know that this name could mean that. Mm. Or you do the reverse search. You're like, I need a name that means loyal. And you look through all the names. You're like, that one's perfect for me. So that's the two kinds of symbolism that you'd want to look at.
Can I quickly call out Colleen Hoover, who did this in just It Ends With Us, where her character is a florist and her name is like Lily Blossom Bloom.
Wow.
Here we are. So I think that's
on the nose.
It's a little campy, but.
I mean, you can beat your readers over the head, but they generally don't appreciate it.
Agreed.
All right. Our next little our next little bit is about how names shouldn't really challenge or confuse readers.
This happens all the time.
It does. It really does.
When people are like, oh, I was always reading that as this. I have characters like that.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the difficult to pronounce names that should generally be avoided. Who in the U.S. pronounced Hermione the right way until the movies came out?
Well, me. I pronounced it correctly. Did you?
You didn't do Hermione?
No.
Like the rest of us?
No.
All right.
No, maybe I just knew this name. It couldn't be Hermione. It couldn't be. So as I was reading it, no, I
Listener
knew it was
poll,
Hermione.
if you said Hermione, please comment. I want to know.
It was not me. Sorry.
So if your reader can't figure out how to pronounce your character name, they're going to come up with their own way to pronounce it. Or they're going to substitute a name that's easier for them to remember. So if you want an alien that has a name that has no vowels in it, I mean, yeah, you can do that. Your reader's probably not going to use it. If that bothers you, then yeah, fix it. If you don't care, then sure. Enjoy your Scalaxis.
You gave me a question. Why should you avoid having names with similar starting sounds? And it's funny that you mentioned that because I exactly did.
I did too.
Yeah, so my original character in my Everstar series, there's a character named Taryn. And Taryn's original name was Rye. And I still sometimes think of him as Rye because I had to change that one with my publisher, dinged me on it because the other main character, his name is Reynolds. Reynolds and Rye. That's people, and they're spelled with Y's in the name, and that just, it didn't go well. And I didn't even recognize that I had done this until my editor really pointed out and said, you need to change his name. So I changed it to Taryn, which I named after Black Cauldron. Reynolds I named after Malcolm Reynolds.
Because you can.
Because I did.
Absolutely. I'm guilty of this because I had Issa and Isbin. And I didn't ever think they would appear in the same scene together. Yeah, they appeared in the same scene together several times. And their names have stuck. And it was something that later I'm like, ooh, I should not have done that. Because even I got confused after a while.
Yeah.
And they're very, very different characters.
So yeah, the moral of that story is that we should definitely stay away from naming similar characters. Because you'll get confused and you'll confuse everyone else.
Yeah, don't be confusing, for sure. So, how about trendy names? I mean, there's memorable names and there's trendy names. And what is some common sense advice when it comes to either of those?
I don't know how to answer this question. Because it should be fitting with the character. So, there are okay, I just thought of this. This is in my notes. There is a very common in the romance genre, romantic comedy genre that I participate in, where using these names for your heroine character is like a guy name or like a non-traditional name. I'll point out, what movie was it? It's a Netflix movie, Love at First Sight.
Okay.
And it's based on a book. It's the probability of love at first sight. And her name is Hadley. And Hadley is not a name that anyone would use. I don't know any Hadleys. I don't know anyone that is.
And I've heard of Hadleys.
I don't know.
But it's not a very common name.
Right. That seems to be part of the culture within the romance genre, when it comes to romantic comedy, is using a variation of a name that is not typically used and is not specifically feminine. How about that?
All right. That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. So this is going to be kind of obvious common sense caution, but if you're choosing a name that if you tell anybody anywhere and they instantly think of a character that's not yours, you probably shouldn't use it. So like Beyonce, Zendaya, Cher, Barbie, Ariel, Sherlock. Every one I said, you had a name, you had a picture jump in your head. And if it was Sherlock, it depends on your favorite Sherlock.
We already know what popped into my head.
You got a bit of Benedict.
Totally.
Oh, yeah. Don't sabotage your character that way. And if you're unsure if you might be committing character sabotage, Google it. It's not difficult. Google your character's name and just see what happens. Because it might be the name of an adult film actor or actress. You also don't want that anywhere near your book.
I'll bring up this point. It comes again from my publisher. I had a girl, her name was Melina, and I loved this name, but my publisher pointed out that it's also like some kind of yeast infection. And so she wanted me to change it or change the spelling or the pronunciation or whatever.
I'm so glad you didn't name her Monostat.
Chlamydia. Such a pretty name.
You laugh, but
no, I laugh, but I know.
Happens. So what's some good advice on finding good character names?
A name establishes a personality from the first meeting. So it needs to sum up your character without even, and we've been talking about that, right? Because the reader will automatically make an assumption of your character because that's what readers do. That's what we do. So if we are guided in one way, then we won't make that kind of, we'll already have that idea, right? What we need to do as writers is implant that presumption that for their idea of the character within that name. It's just the writer's responsibility. It's to direct them to envision that character in the right name. I will point out MASH, because MASH has been when it comes to naming, it's been one of those go-to examples when it comes to personality. So you have Hawkeye Pierce, which he's sharp, he's a great surgeon, but he's witty. You can tell that from the name. His nickname is Hawkeye. And then we've got BJ Honeycutt. Honeycutt, right? Aww. It's just it's cute little, initials, but the Honeycutt gives you a immediate personality of this is, a decent person. This is almost, it has a sweetness to it, so anyway.
So my advice is going back to the trying to avoid names that start with similar sounds. When you start a project that you know is going to need quite a few names, write out the alphabet and then find 26 different names that start with each letter. I mean, that would be a lot of names.
It's 26 names.
So come up with 26 names, one for each letter of the alphabet. I mean, give or take, you don't have to use X.
Yes, you do. Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can have a Xander. That's fine.
I have a Xander.
I know. This is especially useful if you're writing and a new character just decides to pop onto the page and you don't have a name for them that is world appropriate. You would already have a list ready that you can kind of pick a name from. That's already ready. If you like being a name hunter,
like me,
the next time you watch a movie, read the credits. There are really cool names in Hollywood. And so some of the coolest names that I've seen roll up on movie credits, and the production babies list.
Yes, right?
Is really fun to look at. So every time you see one that you're like, that's really cool. If I switch this letter, it would fit my world. Or if I change this sound, it might fit my world. Or if I just use it how it is, as long as I don't use the first name and the last name together, it will fit it fits the world. It's great to have a bunch of these in your pocket that just bring you joy, especially if they evoke a description in your brain without you ever seeing this character.
Exactly. It's magic.
It's a little bit of magic.
It really is.
We do need to discuss legalities because there are some rules about what you should and should not name your names, name your characters. And beyond the obvious, please don't name your character Beyonce. She'll come after you. She has a legal team that has more power than God. Mm-hmm. So unless you're actually writing nonfiction, never use the name of a real person or another popular character as the name of your character. The only exceptions are if they're long dead, their name is not trademarked, and or they're already in the public domain. So you can if they're in the public domain. Like if you want to do a Pride and Prejudice spinoff, those names are fair game. You cannot do a spinoff of any of the Witcher characters yet. Not in public domain.
Not yet.
And he's still alive, so it's going to be a minute.
I will put, well, when you talk about legal, there is the fair use law. Fair use is when you are saying certain things, but you make the statement is you are not this person that supports this, or you're not being paid by these people. It's not a product placement, that kind of thing. So you can say that you listen to Beyonce, but it's not your character name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to legalities, just make sure that your book, and this is like with any publisher, is going to make a legal statement at the beginning of your book. Do not forget this, because you want to make sure that you're declaring that you're fictional, these characters are fictional and they are not based on anyone, because then this removes you from, remember when we talked about due diligence, this removes you from being legally held accountable for using that.
Different episode, but yes.
Yes, and that's why they created the fair use law, because if I write and put Pepsi in my book, am I now sponsoring Pepsi? So there's a caveat, I guess, is what I would say. But don't keep using that, and you can't be a sponsor of it, and you can't. It
doesn't mean you are going to receive anything from the Pepsi company.
Or from Beyonce.
But don't name your character Pepsi.
I had to put a statement in my, I used books in my To Dream in Daylight book, and a lot of them were in public domain, and I did that on purpose, but one of them is not. And I had to make a statement that I don't own anything. I'm not, this author I have nothing to do with. This is just his book. I'm not really supporting it, but it needed to be this specific book that I wanted to use. So anyway, I had to make sure that was all clear.
And this is not having to do with naming, but this is also a really important point. If you copy a character or a person in real life, but give them a different name, if they're clearly identifiable by specific descriptions that you include, you can get slammed for it.
Did you ever see, this just popped into my head, Music and Lyrics?
No.
Okay, Music and Lyrics is with Drew Barrymore and Hugh Grant. It's a really fun.
Sounds cute.
Really fun. And Hugh Grant is this washed up old 80s pop star. And he's doing he would do these little concerts at the fair park or at the mall, something like that.
So sad.
Yeah, but he knows it. He knows that. But Drew Barrymore's character is running away from her professor who used her in his novel that became a huge success. And even though he changed the name, she was the material and she knew it. And it was embarrassing. So if you want that is exactly the example you just pointed out.
Big no-no. Okay. Sometimes a character's name will just come to you and it fits perfectly, and as writers we just don't look back, and it's stuck as that name forever, whether it fits with the world or not. Then there's the rest of our characters. Now hopefully we've given you a few different ways of think about how to name your character that will help you in your current or future project. I had fun with it. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I really don't. I love names. Have fun with it. Jeez, just have fun. Have you ever used a name generator when you're building a D&D character? It's hilarious and super fun. So, yeah.
Like Terran Strongbow.
Yeah, just don't settle.
Sorry, I just stole Terran.
Do something super cool. Terran Strongbow. It's all just last name, but that's fine.
All right, listener assignment. All right. Take a scene you've already written, rewrite it with a different name for your main character, and see how it changes things.
Ooh, that's a good assignment.
Doesn't have to be a long scene, but if it's something that you're like, this seems boring, I don't know what's going on with it, I swear, change your change a character to something else and see what happens.
It does change because when I changed the name of Rye to Taryn, his personality changed.
Shame on him.
Oh my gosh. No, to me, it became better. But.
Good thing too, because if you had a Rye, people would be like, oh, Rye Sand. Like, no.
See, my book came first.
It did. They don't know that.
I know that. And when I see that, I was like, whoa, I'm so glad. I dodged a bullet there.
You did. All right, tell us what our next episode's about.
Well, next episode is, we're in spooky season, and we're going to talk about, it's going to be our 13th episode. And we are starting spooky season with 13 things that scare writers.
Ooh.
So I gave Jody an assignment, and we'll see how we do.
Alrighty. Thank you all for listening today. Remember, we have a Patreon and a Buy Us a Book, otherwise known as Buy Us a Coffee. This has been great fun.
This has been fun. Thank you, Jody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
Misunderstand the assignment.
No.
That's what
I've never noticed that, actually.
I misunderstand, so...
You're a little bit left of the assignment, dear.
What?
Here's the assignment. Here's you.